Our next question is, what were some of your biggest challenges and wins in your leadership journey? And the follow-up question is, did you see yourself as a leader before someone else believed in you? And we're going to invite Virginia first.
Okay, thank you so much. As I think about my leadership journey, I think other than going to the PISA conference and becoming a student leader with CAPAS, one of my biggest challenges was that recognizing, at Portland State University, that while Multnomah County and Portland, we have, a fairly large Pacific Islander community in our general population in the metropolitan area, but not so much at Portland State University. And I was wondering, where are these Pacific Islanders? Why do I not see them in my classroom? And thankfully at the time, they did disaggregate Asian from Pacific Islanders. So we could see the number of Pacific Islanders, and the numbers were just so sad. And so as a leader with CAPAS, one of the things that we asked for is we advocated for a cultural center, a Pacific Islander Asian American Center, which now exists. We advocated for recruitment and retention specialists, which that position has been open and filled for years now. And we also asked for Asia Pacific Islander studies programs, because we recognized at such a large institution that there was not one Pacific Islander or Asian American classes. There's a lot of classes in regards to like Asia, the continent of Asia, right? And the Asian experience in Asia, but not so much the experience of Asian Pacific Islanders, Americans who travel here and live in the community. And so I went from a student leader to an advisor. So I got a job at Portland State University as an advisor, and I used my position to understand how does PSU work as an institution, who makes decisions about some of these programs that should exist. And I got myself on the Diversity Action Council, and I pushed for the things that CAPAS had asked for, and many students before us. And I used my master's degree to get evidence as to why we needed Asian Pacific Islander programming at Portland State University. And to me, it's wonderful to be able to be an alum and walk to campus and actually go to the PIA Center and like actually be able to celebrate with Asian Pacific Islander students and be able to be like, wow, we fought for this and we made it happen, thanks to, making sure that like we ask for it. We're not ashamed to ask for it. We just go and ask for it, try to understand how decisions are made. And I think another thing I learned is, relationships are key for so many things, right? Being in the right space at the right time and knowing the right people. And to me, those are just amazing accomplishments, I think, for our community. Another challenge that I had in my leadership journey is because I am Palauan and white. My mom is Palauan and my dad is white. And so what you see here as a light-skinned Islander, I struggle in my own community because Palauans don't see me as Palauan. And we do have a Palauan association here in the Portland area, Rangalagel Belao. And my uncle is pretty much in charge of the organization. And anytime I go to a Palauan event, so many people will look at me and say, and I speak and understand Palauan, and they'll ask people like, who is this person? Why is she here? What Palauan is she here with? And so like I really struggled since I was young to have my own people not recognize me. Like I feel like I'm never going to be Palauan enough, and I'm never going to be white enough either. And so my leadership journey has been a struggle, because sometimes they'll say, why are you trying to help the Pacific Islanders? Why are you trying to help Palauans? You're not Palauan. And I'm like, yeah, actually I am. So constantly have to prove myself. I constantly have, and because we're a matrilineal country, culture, you know, they're always like, well, who's your mom? What island are you from? You know, so I have to say, you know, my mom is Tomomi Pedro. We're from Ngayaur. You know, we're from Oragiblay clan, right? Like I have to be able to state that. And even then I still have to prove, right? So I constantly feel as a Palauan woman leader who's also queer, whew, that queerness in my community is extremely taboo, right? And so that's another challenge that I've had is people judging me for my queerness. And it hurts so much, right? But I still show up for my community. I still try to do everything in my power to make sure that our community gets what they need. And I think the last thing I'll share with you is during this pandemic, so many of our BIPOC, our Black, Indigenous, people of color, our tribal communities, so many folks hurt so bad with COVID-19, especially our Indigenous folks, our Native American folks, and our Pacific Islanders. We had really high numbers of infection, death, and hospital rates. And when I was with Multnomah County, I had to really fight for the, you know, for our healthcare industries to be able to say like, we are hurting and you need to do certain things for our community specifically, that is community led. You need to go to us as community leaders to help ourselves. And so we were able to really like funnel federal, state, and local dollars to Pacific Islander serving organizations. When I started at Multnomah County, they did not know that there was a lot of Pacific Islander organizations that serve ourselves. Many times, money would go to Asian Pacific American organizations, right? But very little of that money will actually go to Pacific Islanders. And so being able to change narrative and say, hey, there's Pacific Islander organizations that serve Pacific Islanders, please give them the money to serve themselves. So that was a really big win, I think, for our community to be able to have some of that money in order to have community health workers be able to have things translated in our various languages and have things that are more culturally relevant to our community during this time of COVID. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Virginia. That's really powerful. Anna, would you like to add on?
Sure. Yeah. So I think one of my biggest challenges is just early on, and it's actually part of the second piece of the question, which was around, did you see yourself as a leader before someone else believed in you? And the answer is yes, actually, I did. But it's funny because one of the challenges is I'm incredibly driven. You know, I'm ambitious, hardworking, but I'm also an introvert, incredibly shy as a child. So I think especially early on in my career, and especially as I was growing up, you know, leading into career, those two things were at odds. And I think I fell into the trap of the model minority myth very frequently, you know, working hard, heads down, quiet, you know, dutiful, all of those things. And because I was good at that, but also had this constant sort of battle with sort of my ambition and my drive. And so I didn't really know how to put those two things together at first. And so I think that was one of the biggest challenges. And, you know, part of, I think the being that shy and that introvert is in the early parts of my career, I didn't really look like a real executive or a leader at all, or even a growing sort of professional in the workplace. And as I've sort of built my career and grown that experience, you know, I've been told that I don't look like a real executive or a CEO, or that I don't have real experience. And whether it's the youth or the, you know, the quieter tone of voice, or those sorts of just authentic inherent traits that I have, those were sort of the biggest challenges that I faced sort of growing my career. And then in tying back to my first response to your first question, which was a great one, was when I did finally see someone who looked like me, who was in a leadership role. That was a real turning point for me to think to myself, wow, there's people who can actually be successful by leaning into some of the strengths or the traits or the characteristics of who they are, and leaning into those in a way that actually becomes a real leadership strength. And so I think that answers the question. But the wins have really been as I moved on to Avenue, and, you know, we just crossed our six-year anniversary, and I have never been a part of an organization that's had such a collaborative empathetic, supportive culture that's also incredibly driven. We do great work, we work hard, but it's a way in which everyone feels a lot of trust and really truly supports one another. And it's a safe environment, and we're able to have conversations. We do a lot of work around anti-racism, dismantling white supremacy culture in the workplace. And those aren't really easy conversations to have in a typical or in any workplace or even with friends or family. And yet sort of the environment and the safe space that we've created has enabled some of those conversations to happen. And also when feedback has to be shared, you know, there's room, and we have continued to work on sort of building that culture of feedback. So I think some of the inherent traits that I battled with earlier on in childhood and in my career ended up and are serving me well at this point in time.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Anna. Our next question is, for those in the AANHPI community who are new to leadership or aspiring to leadership roles, what advice do you have for avoiding or breaking the so-called glass or bamboo ceiling? Padmashree, would you like to opine?
Yeah, absolutely. And for those who are not aware, bamboo ceiling was, I think, a term that was coined back in 2005 or so, with some research work that was done in the context of how Asian Americans who are typically associated with or correlated with higher levels of education and potentially even higher entry levels into tech, or don't necessarily find themselves in leadership positions and face something called a bamboo ceiling, which is an actual obstacle to their growth. I'll again sort of relate back to my own experience and sort of keep it to maybe something that's representative of the South Asian American community. But of course, you know, take this with a grain of salt and see what might be applicable to you. In terms of what sorts of tips and sort of suggestions I might offer on folks who are aspiring to be in leadership, I'll say a few things, right? First, focus on yourself. In other words, look inward, because that's the one place we can control, right? So to start with, whether it is believing in yourself more, or it is, in my case, you know, challenging some of the value systems that I was raised with, you know, respect authority, respect elders, you know, the white man must know more, thanks to some of the colonization that we've gone through in India. It's all deeply ingrained. So take a moment to think even around what biases you yourself might be. I know I hope I'm not saying something controversial, but, you know, examine where you might be holding yourself back, and see if you can sort of work through some of those. And it's been a long and hard journey for me to realize, oh, wow, this young, you know, 20-something white male is able to so quickly talk about their feedback on a particular thing, but I have so many more deep, thoughtful things to say, but I'm not saying anything because I'm holding myself back. Can I start being more vocal, as an example, right? So that's the first thing I might say. The second thing is, if you are in the position of changing jobs, or you're interviewing actively for a role, say data scientist came up at the top of this call, that's an excellent and lucrative profession. Pick your company carefully, not only for what they do or what they're working on, what tech they're working on, but also what their culture stands for. During your interviews, ask a lot of questions. What is it like? How does the written culture manifest in day-to-day? You will get a pretty good idea, is this a company you want to work at or not? And that can also be something that's a precursor to whether or not you're going to see good leadership growth in that company. So when you make those career changes, take the time to understand the cultural implications as well. I just have a couple more things lots to say on this topic. Another thing I've noticed time and time again, the people who get promoted are the ones who get seen, right? So think about where and how you might seek visibility for the work that you're doing. It may be in the form of finding a sponsor inside your organization, and a sponsor is not a mentor. It's someone hired in leadership, does not have to be Asian American, could be anybody, someone who happens to you know, connect with, support with, and champions your work. Having visibility for the work that you do is almost as important as the work itself sometimes, because again, this is deep rooted in me. Self-advocacy is not something that comes to me often, right? You're taught humility, you're taught keep your head down, but it's almost the opposite of what you need in the workplace, because you have to be an advocate for yourself. And if that visibility is there and available to you, then it provides a platform for your own growth. And then a couple other things I'll say. One, when it comes to manager relationships, like your people manager relationships with your own manager supervisor, spend some time really articulating what success looks like in your role. Be objective about it, because one of the things that people who face the bamboo ceiling face that other, say, average white Americans don't, is that typically average white Americans are reviewed for their work, but a lot of times people of Asian backgrounds actually are more evaluated for their identity, or the evaluations can be more subjective. So if you take the time to sit down with your manager and write down what success looks like in your role very articulately, and you go achieve those things, then you can come back and hold them accountable to say, hey, you know what, I have achieved what I need to achieve. What does it take to get to the next level? And then the last thing I'll say is pay it forward. None of us got here without the support of other people. And so always be investing in, whether it's an ERG, whether it is supporting other voices in the room, whether it is asking questions, make sure that you're also trying to actively contribute to creating safety for other people in your organization, so that everybody can rise.
Thank you, Padmashree. Those are very practical. Virginia, would you like to pile on?
Yes, thank you so much. I think I just think back to my own personal experience when I was a student, being invited to join a student organization as a leader. If you're a student, that is an amazing way of actually getting the experience so I'm going to just be honest, right? I learned by making mistakes, correcting and trying again. And so many times when I was an advisor, I would have students come to me and say, oh, I'm not a leader, I don't think I could do this. And I'll say, well, that's what you have us to help guide you, right? Like, I was very lucky to have someone guide me through this process, so let me help guide you. So just telling my story about, I didn't think I was a leader either until someone asked me to give it a try. And another thing for folks who are maybe newer in their career, or just trying to help themselves get to another leadership role, is there's so many mentorship and leadership programs. This program offered a mentorship program in the very beginning, or people who want to be mentors. There's so many that are available that are constantly looking for people that they want to help support. Another thing is become a board member of an organization that you have the same type of values and mission. Maybe I've sat on many boards. I've also helped to start organizations, and I love it when new folks come to me and say, like, oh, I don't think I can sit on a board, and I'll say, well, why not? Right? Like, you don't know, you can do it until you give it a try. And so pick a board that is going to help you develop those skills that can hold your hand through the process if needed. Also, if you are already in a workplace, see if you have any employee resource groups. Perhaps you can start with a leadership there. Employee resource groups are really amazing, I think, because it really focuses on trying to connect with people like yourself. You can have a caucus space. And I think they're a really great way in order to be seen, in order to be helping your community out. So those are some of the things that I have told people in my life about how to get on track on leadership roles. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. A quick time check. We have 3 more main questions to go, and I would love to go through all of them because I love them. So speak as quickly and clearly as you can. Our next question is, how do you lead through collaboration? And what are your experiences with shared leadership? Anna, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, so this is a really great question. I think I've experienced environments where it's been the complete opposite, but my approach to this is one, we have a very collaborative approach to decision making and leadership at Avenue. But I think it really starts with first having a vision, sort of a mission, a purpose, and core values that really guide the company and guide the team or decision making. And so that's my role, is to set the vision, the purpose, the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, and then involving my entire team. And then I have really 2 key leaders at this point who are sort of part of that leadership team, but I do involve the entire company in strategic planning on a quarterly basis for Avenue. And what I've found is, we don't make decisions by consensus, but it's a process of soliciting input. And so making sure that everyone on the team feels heard, that their feedback, their opinion, their experience has been shared. And we may take that and utilize it and come to a decision. We may not, but at least the team has been seen, they've been heard. And so really seeking that input and collaboration with leadership, and as well as with team members. And I think that just my experience with that has created a culture that's really highly engaged. And I've been in environments that are less so, and maybe more of a top-down approach that is really sort of disengaged employees. And my hope as we sort of move and sort of iterate through this process is to keep a really highly engaged team who feels like their opinions and their feedback matter, and that they really are contributing to the growth and the evolution and success of Avenue.
Thank you, Anna. Virginia, would you like to add on?
Yeah, thank you. I think I normally start with helping folks clarify what the difference is between collaboration and cooperation, right? Collaboration is when whatever we're building, it's because it happened with all of us from start to finish. Where cooperation is, I already have a plan, I just need you to go along with it. So really, if we're trying to do collaborative work, that we really are starting from the very beginning on the same level and building whatever it is going to be together. Also starting out with community guidelines, right? Standards, like how are we going to be doing this work together, like Anna said. And then leading by example. A lot of times I try to hold myself back from doing the work and guiding other people to say, look, how would you want to do this, right? Well, let's give it a try, having them, give things a go instead of me telling people how to do something. I'm more of a constructivist of, I have some ideas, but I want to hear about what do you want to try to do? And then also another thing that's really important to me when I'm doing shared leadership is understanding people's learning and communication styles, right? Like some people want to be in a room together in order to like read body language. Other people want just spreadsheets on everything, and I love spreadsheets myself. So, but just really learning and adapting to different people's learning styles and their communication styles, so that we can always kind of be on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia.